The sky over New Cairo glowed with an eerie orange hue, not from the city lights, but from a restless sun, casting long shadows over flooded streets and broken buildings. Humanity had long ignored the subtle warnings of its own actions, but the consequences were impossible to overlook. Oceans had swallowed continents, storms had grown violent beyond memory, and entire ecosystems teetered on the edge of collapse. Yet amidst this chaos, a spark of hope remained, a spark born out of luck or divine mercy, but human ingenuity and determination. Dr. Elias Karev stood on the observation deck of the Orbital Research Station, staring down at the battered planet. He had dedicated his life to turning science into salvation, to proving that intellect could overcome even the harshest of disasters. Below him, satellites and orbital reactors glimmered faintly, their purpose not just to observe, but to heal. They had been meticulously designed to regulate the atmosphere, to remove harmful gases, and to stabilize climate patterns with precise calculations. Humanity had no choice but to innovate or perish. The first signs of success were subtle. A test in the Sahara, barely noticeable from the ground, showed a stabilization in temperature and a reduction in the intensity of dust storms. Karev smiled faintly, aware that small victories would soon cascade into larger ones. Humans had always been underestimated, their fragility mocked by more advanced civilizations, their resilience doubted even by themselves. But time and again, they had demonstrated an uncanny ability to adapt, to solve problems that seemed insurmountable, and to endure against impossible odds. Food was a crisis of equal urgency. Rising seas had drowned farmlands, and pests flourished in the heat, leaving populations on the brink of famine. Karev's team engineered crops resilient enough to survive harsh climates, crops that could thrive in urban rooftop farms and hydroponic systems alike. In Mumbai, a once parched rooftop garden flourished, rice and wheat swaying in artificial breezes, tended by children who laughed unaware of the miracle beneath their feet. Science had made it possible, but it was human care, persistence, and adaptation that allowed it to flourish. Water scarcity followed closely behind. Rivers had turned acidic, glaciers had melted, and underground aquifers were emptying at alarming rates. Humans responded with orbital desalination stations and nanofiltration systems capable of purifying water on an unprecedented scale. Slowly, rivers flowed again, wetlands revived, and ecosystems began to stabilize. Communities that had teetered on the edge of collapse found relief, and children played again near once dry riverbeds, oblivious to years of struggle that had restored the life-giving waters. The journey of salvation was not without risk. Miscalculations in the orbital reactors could have triggered atmospheric collapse. Engineered crops could have disrupted delicate ecosystems, and nanotechnology carried the potential for unforeseen consequences. Yet humans pressed forward, guided by careful planning, relentless experimentation, and an unshakable belief that knowledge, when used wisely, could save the world. Fear did not dictate their actions. Precision and perseverance did. Decades passed, and the results became undeniable. Earth's temperature stabilized, storms became predictable, and ice sheets began to thicken once more. Cities adapted, integrating vertical farms, sustainable energy grids, and ecological design into urban planning. Humanity had survived not by luck, not by divine intervention, but by harnessing intellect and collaboration. Each small victory built upon the last, and the narrative of despair slowly shifted into one of cautious optimism. Science, once a tool of convenience or curiosity, had become humanity's lifeline. It extended beyond Earth, reaching colonies on Mars and the moons of Jupiter, where extreme environments challenged survival in every conceivable way. The same principles applied everywhere: careful observation, calculated intervention, and the courage to act decisively. Humans had learned that survival was not a product of chance. It was a consequence of ingenuity, collaboration, and courage. And yet, humans never grew arrogant. They remembered the countless lives lost, the cities destroyed, and the ecosystems devastated. Every innovation carried the weight of responsibility, every achievement tempered by the awareness of fragility. It was this humility that made their science effective, their ingenuity sustainable, and their civilization enduring. Humans had discovered that survival was not conquest, but understanding, not domination, but adaptation, not power, but wisdom. The day humanity turned science into salvation was not marked by fanfare. There were no celebrations or fireworks, only quiet relief, subtle smiles, and the first successful harvest in regions once thought doomed. Rivers ran clear again, crops swayed in the breeze, and children played in neighborhoods that had once been under threat from rising seas. The world, battered but healing, bore witness to a species that had refused to surrender, a species that had chosen to face its challenges with intellect, resilience, and heart. Dr. Karev, older now, with streaks of silver threading through his hair, looked down from the observation deck once more. Below him, humans worked, played, and thrived. Science had provided the tools, but it was human determination that wielded them. For the first time in generations, hope was not an abstract concept but a tangible reality, flowing in rivers, ripening in crops, and shining in the eyes of children. Humanity had learned a lesson older than technology itself. Salvation was not given, it was created. And on this day, they had turned knowledge into life itself. Even as Earth began to heal, the challenges of survival demanded constant vigilance. Humanity had learned that disasters did not come in gentle waves. They struck suddenly, without warning, and often compounded each other. Yet with each crisis, humans grew stronger, smarter, and more united. They had transformed fear into action, despair into ingenuity, and knowledge into salvation. Cities once thought uninhabitable now flourish with vertical gardens and artificial lakes, while orbital systems stabilize the climate, providing both protection and a blueprint for the future. The lessons of Earth soon reached beyond its atmosphere. Martian colonies, struggling to maintain breathable air and temperate conditions, began to thrive under the guidance of human engineers. Oxygen-generating reactors hummed steadily. Hydroponic farms provided food, and water reclamation systems ensured life in a world that had once seemed unyielding. Children born on Mars learned to walk in gravity less than half of Earth's, to tend plants in nutrient-rich soil, and to navigate life with a quiet understanding that survival required intelligence and teamwork above all else. Humanity's influence spread quietly but profoundly. Other species, who had once dismissed humans as fragile and short-sighted, began to seek their counsel. They marveled at how a species so small could achieve what empires spanning galaxies could not: the ability to adapt, endure, and restore balance in the face of chaos. Humans did not boast, they taught. They shared strategies for climate stabilization, sustainable food production, and ecological engineering. In doing so, they became more than survivors. They became mentors, guides, and symbols of hope. The next great challenge came in the form of a cosmic anomaly, an unanticipated surge of solar radiation threatening the Earth-Mars system. Scientists predicted catastrophic effects if immediate action was not taken. Humanity responded not with panic, but with precision. Orbital shields were reinforced, energy fields were calibrated, and emergency protocols implemented. Teams of engineers, scientists, and volunteers worked tirelessly, adjusting systems, monitoring atmospheric responses, and ensuring that both planets remain habitable. It was not a spectacle of heroism, but of discipline, cooperation, and unwavering determination. In the midst of this crisis, Dr. Karev reflected on the journey. Humanity had survived floods, famine, drought, and political upheaval. They had endured public skepticism, economic instability, and the relentless pressure of natural disasters. Yet through every challenge, the same principles had carried them forward: observation, analysis, adaptation, and action. Science was no longer a passive pursuit. It had become the very tool of salvation, wielded not for profit or power, but for life itself. On Mars, children played in greenhouses built atop red plains, unaware that their safety was secured by layers of innovation and intelligence. On Earth, farmers watched resilient crops sway in revitalized fields, marveling at how species thought lost calamity now flourished again. Humans had turned despair into hope, proving that survival required not just strength, but foresight, creativity, and a refusal to surrender to circumstances. Yet humanity understood that salvation was never complete. The universe remained vast, unpredictable, and often cruel. New challenges would arise, new anomalies would threaten life, and unforeseen crises would demand solutions. But humans had learned to meet every challenge with preparation, insight, and courage. They had transformed science into a living, breathing ally, capable of shaping not only the environment, but the very destiny of life itself. Even in moments of quiet, when the skies were calm and the ocean settled, humans remained vigilant. Orbital sensors scanned the horizon, predictive models ran continuously, and researchers studied both Earth and Mars with meticulous care. Survival had become a discipline, a culture, and philosophy. Humanity had realized that salvation was not an event but a practice, an ongoing commitment to the preservation and flourishing of life. And so, the day humans turned science into salvation was not marked by a single triumph, but by countless acts of foresight, courage, and ingenuity. It was visible in the restored forests, the thriving farms, the children playing safely, and the silent hum of orbital systems that maintained balance across planets. Humanity had proven that intellect, collaboration, and determination could overcome even the gravest of challenges. In the end, Dr. Karev knew that humanity's greatest achievement was not the technology itself, but the collective will to use it wisely. Science had provided the tools, but it was human judgment, resilience, and empathy that transformed those tools into life-saving solutions. As he looked out across the recovering planet and the colonies of Mars, he understood that survival had always been within their reach. Not because the universe was kind, but because humans were relentless, adaptable, and unwilling to yield to the forces of destruction. As decades passed, humanity's mastery of science became both a shield and a guiding force. Earth, once fragile and fractured, had begun to stabilize. Oceans no longer swallowed coastlines overnight, and weather systems followed predictable patterns, giving cities a chance to rebuild and thrive. Vertical farms reached toward the sky, harvesting sunlight and recycling water with mechanical precision. Artificial wetlands nurtured birds and insects that had long disappeared, while orbital stations monitored the planet below, adjusting climate interventions in real time. Humanity had learned that survival was not a matter of brute force, but of intelligence applied consistently, patiently, and with care. But the universe had more tests in store. A massive solar flare erupted unexpectedly, strong enough to threaten both orbital systems and Earth's fragile electrical grids. Communication satellites faltered, and power surges swept through cities. Panic rippled across continents, yet humans did not falter. Engineers rerouted energy flows, automated shield arrays deployed over critical habitats, and AI systems predicted the flare's progression with remarkable accuracy. The disaster, which could have crippled a less prepared species, passed with minimal impact. Humanity's ability to anticipate and adapt had turned potential devastation into a demonstration of precision and planning. Meanwhile, Mars faced its own challenges. Dust storms of unprecedented magnitude swept across colonies, blocking sunlight and threatening vital hydroponic crops. Engineers and scientists collaborated to deploy reflective orbital panels and atmospheric stabilizers, reducing the severity of the storms and ensuring that the colonies remain habitable. Children, born into a world once thought unlivable, now learned to navigate Martian landscapes, tending gardens, studying planetary science, and participating in survival drills that honed instincts their ancestors had cultivated over generations. On Mars, survival was not instinct. It was a taught skill, a way of life shaped by foresight and ingenuity. Yet humanity's triumphs were not merely technological. The social fabric of civilization had been reshaped. Governments, once fragmented and reactive, became cooperative and proactive. Resources were allocated efficiently, and knowledge was shared freely among nations. Ethical considerations guided every scientific endeavor, ensuring that the tools of survival did not become instruments of exploitation. Humanity's greatest strength lay not in its machines, but in its collective will to preserve life and maintain balance. Even as the planet stabilized, new challenges emerged in the form of ecological feedback loops. Forests, rivers, and oceans recovered, but unexpected interactions between species and ecosystems created unforeseen complications. Engineers and biologists worked together, using predictive modeling and adaptive interventions to ensure that natural systems could coexist with human habitation. Every challenge was met with innovation. Every obstacle transformed into an opportunity to learn and improve. Humanity had become a species that could not only survive, but enhance the world around it without destroying it. In the orbital stations above Earth, Dr. Karev and his team monitored the results of decades of intervention. Data streamed in from climate sensors, water purification networks, and agricultural nodes across the planet. The numbers reflected stability, growth, and resilience. Where once humanity had struggled merely to survive, they now had the tools to thrive. But the greatest revelation was not in the numbers. It was in the human spirit. Communities once fractured by fear and scarcity now cooperated. Children laughed in revitalized cities, and scientists continued to push boundaries, confident that knowledge wielded wisely could safeguard the future. The day humanity truly turned science into salvation arrived not with a singular event, but as a culmination of efforts spanning generations. Rivers flowed clean, crops yielded more than ever, and cities stood resilient against climate extremes. Mars thrived as a parallel home, a testament to human adaptability. Orbital systems functioned seamlessly, protecting Earth and its colonies from environmental threats. Humanity had learned to predict, prevent, and mitigate disasters, transforming science from a passive study into an active force of preservation. Yet humanity remained humble. Every victory was tempered by the knowledge that the universe was vast, unpredictable, and indifferent. New threats would rise: asteroids, solar anomalies, and unknown cosmic phenomena. But humanity's philosophy had evolved. Survival was no longer a reactive struggle. It was a proactive, collaborative practice where knowledge, foresight, and empathy guided every decision. Science was not a replacement for courage or wisdom. It was the instrument through which those qualities found tangible expression. In classrooms and laboratories, children learned the history of survival, not as mythology, but as a living record of human achievement. They studied climate intervention, sustainable agriculture, and planetary engineering. They learned to value cooperation, to respect ecosystems, and understand that knowledge carried responsibility. Every young mind absorbed a lesson that salvation was a choice, a series of actions guided by intellect, ethics, and foresight. And so, humanity moved forward, not in reckless expansion, but in careful stewardship. The planet, once on the brink of collapse, now flourished under the attentive care of its inhabitants. Mars became a thriving outpost, a laboratory for experimentation, and a home for future generations. Science had provided the tools, but it was humanity's vision, perseverance, and ethical framework that had turned those tools into salvation. Dr. Karev, older and grayer, looked down from the observation deck of the orbital station, gazing at the recovering planet below. He saw rivers reflecting sunlight, forests stretching toward the horizon, and cities interwoven with nature. He saw children playing in green spaces, unaware of the decades-long struggle that had made their world safe. Humanity had not merely survived. It had evolved, learned, and proven that intellect and collaboration could overcome even the most extreme threats. The universe remained vast and unpredictable, but humanity had demonstrated a profound truth: that with knowledge, foresight, and determination, even the greatest challenges could be met. Science had become more than a tool. It had become a shield, a guide, and a promise. The day humans turned science into salvation was the day they learned that survival was not a matter of luck or divine favor, but of action, intelligence, and courage. Beyond Earth and Mars, humanity's vision expanded. The colonies on Europa, Titan, and even distant exoplanets became testaments to human ingenuity. Each settlement was designed with sustainability, resilience, and adaptability at its core. Orbital systems extended their protective reach, monitoring not only environmental stability, but also cosmic hazards like rogue asteroids, solar flares, and interstellar radiation. Every colony was both a laboratory and a sanctuary, proving that survival was not limited to one world. It could flourish wherever humans applied knowledge with care and foresight. In the vast emptiness of space, the lessons of Earth had become universal principles. Humanity built fleets of autonomous repair ships, capable of maintaining orbital habitats and planetary infrastructures without direct intervention. AI systems, guided by human ethics and oversight, predicted environmental fluctuations decades in advance. When a supernova in a distant system threatened a fledgling human colony, orbital shields and energy redistribution arrays activated seamlessly, saving millions of lives. What once would have been an apocalypse became a managed event, evidence that science, coupled with preparation and wisdom, could turn even cosmic calamities into survivable challenges. Yet technology alone was not enough. Humans understood that survival required cooperation, compassion, and shared purpose. Colonies exchanged knowledge freely, offering solutions to ecological problems, energy distribution, and food security. Children born across multiple planets learned not only mathematics and science, but ethics, philosophy, and the responsibility that came with knowledge. They were taught that intellect without empathy could lead to ruin, and power without foresight could destroy. In these lessons, humanity's true salvation had taken root. Conflict arose, as they always would, but they were increasingly resolved through negotiation, shared technology, and scientific consensus rather than violence. The species that once fractured into competing nations on Earth now cooperated across planets, unified by the understanding that survival depended on collective action. Diplomacy became guided by data and logic, tempered with ethics, and every major decision underwent rigorous analysis. Humanity had learned that the tools of salvation could not flourish without moral responsibility. One day, a massive cosmic storm, an unprecedented combination of solar flares and gamma-ray bursts, threatened the entire solar system. Millions watched as predictive models simulated potential devastation. Fear rippled across colonies, but humans responded with calm precision. Orbital shields were reinforced, energy grids rerouted, and automated systems deployed across planetary surfaces. Every child trained in emergency protocols moved to secure habitats. Every scientist adjusted parameters in real time. Every engineer ensured that backup systems functioned flawlessly. The storm passed without catastrophic loss. What might have destroyed civilizations instead became a demonstration of humanity's mastery over its environment. On Earth, children ran through revitalized forests and parks, oblivious to the trials that had brought them safety. On Mars, settlers harvested crops from hydroponic towers, confident in the resilience of their world. And beyond, in the cold expanse of space, humanity's colonies endured, interconnected by data streams, mutual support, and the shared understanding that survival was not accidental but intentional. Science had become more than a pursuit. It was a philosophy, a practice, and a promise to preserve life against all odds. Dr. Elias Karev, now frail with age but radiant with quiet satisfaction, stood on the observation deck of the Central Orbital Station. He gazed across the vast network of human settlements and the shimmering beauty of Earth below. Humanity had endured famine, drought, storms, and cosmic hazards. They had turned desperation into innovation, ignorance into knowledge, and fear into action. Science had been the tool, but it was human courage, ethics, and collaboration that had transformed that tool into salvation. In that moment, he realized the profound truth of their journey. Salvation was not a single achievement, nor was an artifact of technology. It was a continuous commitment, a philosophy woven into every choice and every generation. Humanity had learned to look at the universe not with fear, but with curiosity and resolve. They had discovered that no disaster, no matter how great, could overcome the species that refused to surrender, that adapted, and that acted with wisdom. Across the stars, humans continued their work, guided by the principle that knowledge was a responsibility and action was a path to life. Colonies expanded, ecosystems thrived, and civilizations once thought fragile became models of endurance and ingenuity. Humanity's story, written in rivers, forests, cities, and orbital stations, was a testament to what could be achieved when intellect was wielded with purpose and compassion. And so, the day humanity turned science into salvation was not just a historical moment. It was an ongoing reality, a legacy written in the lives of billions, in the flourishing of planets once thought doomed, and in the spirit of a species that refused to accept extinction. The universe remained vast and unpredictable, but humanity had proven a universal truth: that intelligence, cooperation, and courage could prevail, that knowledge could be a shield against chaos, and that salvation was not given, it was created. In quiet reflection, Karev smiled. Humanity had survived, yes, but more importantly, they had grown. They had transformed despair into hope, chaos into order, and intellect into a force for life. Across the stars, their legacy endured, a shining proof that even in the face of overwhelming odds, the human spirit, guided by science and wisdom, could turn survival into triumph and turn knowledge into salvation.